Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Guest Emerges. What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Hercule Poirot and the silence in the second drawing room, hit me up. What made you smile today, and where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready. Because nothing in whispers in the fog is ever what it seems. The rain lashed against the windows, like a multitude of tiny fists, and the wind howled, carrying with it an air of foreboding that crept into the very bones of the ancient manor. Inside, the flickering candlelight danced nervously, throwing long shadows across the richly adorned walls. It was on this bleak evening that the tranquility of an intimate gathering would be irrevocably shattered. The clock struck 7, its melancholic chime echoing ominously in the silence, when an unexpected knock at the door resonated through the halls. Martha, the housekeeper, paused, her face paling as she glanced towards the entrance. "Who could that be at such an hour?" she murmured, her eyes wide with apprehension. Lady Agatha, the matriarch, waved her hand dismissively, feigning nonchalance, yet the tremor in her voice belied her true feelings. "Perhaps a traveler seeking shelter from the storm. Let us see." Little did they know, this guest would not simply be seeking warmth, but would herald the beginning of their darkest night. As the heavy door creaked open, a figure stood silhouetted against the tempestuous backdrop. Drenched from the rain, yet dignified, he stepped forward into the dim light of the grand foyer. It was Hercule Poirot, the renowned detective, looking as immaculate as ever amidst the chaos. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he spoke softly to himself, barely audible but laden with a premonition of darkness. Unbeknownst to the gathered company, Poirot had been inadvertently drawn to this gathering by an aura of mystery that enveloped its host. Yet now, he stood witness to something far more sinister unfolding before him. As introductions were made, Poirot observed each individual with calculative scrutiny. Lady Agatha, with her silver hair pulled tightly into a bun, was a woman of refined grace but harbored within her the burden of secrets long hidden. Seated near her was Charles Everton, a distant cousin whose jittery demeanor betrayed a nervous disposition as he fidgeted with the cuff of his sleeve. Finally, there was Miss Eleanor Hughes, a strikingly beautiful young woman with eyes like storm clouds, who had come to the manor as a companion to Lady Agatha, but seemed to harbor a deep-rooted resentment beneath her polished surface. Suspicion already began to weave its intricate web within Poirot's mind when, moments later, a blood-curdling scream pierced through the conversation, sending a shockwave through the assembly. They rushed toward the source, a small study, its door ajar, where a shocking scene awaited them. There, amidst the elegant decor and the scent of pipe tobacco, lay the lifeless body of Richard Atherton, an old acquaintance of Lady Agatha, his face pale and mouth agape in a final scream. A silver letter opener protruded grotesquely from his chest, glistening ominously in the candlelight. While the others recoiled in horror, Poirot stepped closer to the body, his sharp mind working in overdrive. "A most dreadful affair," he mused, examining the positioning of the body and the faint trails of blood that marked the polished floor. "But what motives lie behind such violence?" He noted the open drawer behind Atherton, its contents strewn about carelessly, and an envelope addressed to Lady Agatha, now cast aside. Poirot's mind was ablaze with possibilities. As panic ensued, Poirot quickly took command of the situation. The storm outside thrashed somberly, its fury echoing the turmoil within the manor as he gathered the assembled guests. Each exhibited a facade of horror, yet Poirot sensed the undercurrent of tension and betrayal that hung heavy in the air. He glanced at Lady Agatha, whose composure was beginning to crack. "Madame, you seem affected by this tragedy," he remarked thoughtfully. Agatha's reply was defensive, almost too quick. "Of course I am. He was an old friend. But I knew nothing of his business here." Poirot turned to Charles, whose face had turned an unsettling shade of green. "And you, Monsieur Everton, what say you? Your reaction is perhaps more revealing than you realize." Charles stammered, attempting to string together his words, revealing little more than fear-laden denial. "It wasn't me. I hardly knew the man." Miss Eleanor maintained a stone-cold demeanor, the glimmer of satisfaction flashing temporarily in her eyes before she caught herself. "This is all terribly unfortunate. We should not jump to conclusions, surely." Poirot made a mental note, intrigued by her poised yet overly calculated response. It was becoming evident that the three were tangled in a web far more intricate than mere friendship. He sensed something lurking just beyond the surface, twisting and contorting their realities. As the night wore on, questions hung suspended in the air like the heavy curtain of rain outside. Poirot engaged each in an attempt to lay bare their motivations, but each reply sent him spiraling further down the rabbit hole of deceit. He examined the wreckage of the study, noting the overturned chair and a shattered photograph of Lady Agatha and Richard. The universe of possibilities exploded within him, a harmonious chaos of potentialities. Who stood to gain from this heinous act? And what was the nature of their entangled past? As they awaited the arrival of authorities, Poirot continued to gather fragments, piecing together a narrative shrouded in darkness. Yet just as he suspected he had the first glimmer of the truth, another twist unfurled before him. The revelation that the letter opener was not merely a murder weapon, but a token of obsession. In Atherton's hand, Poirot had found a scrap of paper hidden within the envelope, revealing a plan to expose a secret that would threaten the very lives of Lady Agatha, Charles, and Eleanor alike. But then, the true twist revealed itself unexpectedly. Upon further examination of the envelope, Poirot identified a slight tear, suggesting it had been hastily opened and replaced, its contents violated. The documents manifested secrets that connected them all. Revelations about a hidden relationship, past betrayals, and shocking truths that stretch back decades. It all pointed unerringly to betrayal. Yet part of him remained ensnared by a deeper enigma that lay invisibly woven in the dark tapestry of their intertwined lives. As the storm began to abate, the revelation was near. Poirot summoned the trio into the drawing room, the flickering candles casting ominous shadows across them, their faces illuminating their apprehension and fear. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is often said that in darkness, truth reveals its form. You see, the answer lies not only in the act of murder, but in the betrayal that manipulates the very heart." With a final gasp of realization, Poirot unveiled the identity of the true murderer, revealing that the betrayal had come not from the suspects, but from the man they believed to be their friend. For the heart, it conceals its best secrets, but the soul shows its splendor in the light of truth, he declared, leaving them breathless. The finality of his revelations echoed against the walls of the manor as the storm outside finally ceased, leaving them with the chilling understanding that in their desperate quest for survival, they were forever entrapped by the shadows of their choices. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The night whispered its secrets through the ancient manor, each raindrop a reminder of the blood that had recently stained its polished floors. Amidst the flickering candlelight, shadows loomed large, concealing truths that clawed at the edges of consciousness. The silence shattered once more, not with a cry, but with the sound of a heavy heart, as Hercule Poirot pondered the invitation to investigate yet another unsettling occurrence at this cursed habitation. The storm had persisted, casting a pallor over the evening, agitating the restless souls gathered within. They had scarcely begun to process the shocking demise of Richard Atherton when the unthinkable happened. Lady Agatha, visibly frayed by the tragic events, collapsed under the weight of her emotions, her expression a mask of terror that suggested unspoken words clawing for release. Poirot, inspired by a sense of duty and curiosity, immediately rushed to her side, his instinct urging him to uncover the unnatural roots of this chaos. As he knelt beside her, he caught a glimpse of wild-eyed Charles Everton, wringing his hands in agitation. "You see?" Charles stammered, casting fearful glances toward the door. "It's a curse, this place. We should all leave while we can." His words were frantic, and Poirot's mind sharpened as he observed the way Charles avoided Lady Agatha's intense gaze. Meanwhile, Miss Eleanor, ever composed, stood in the corner, her face a study in unreadable tension, as if the storm contained more than just rain. Threatening shadows lingered in the nuances of her demeanor. As Lady Agatha regained her composure, her aquamarine eyes surveyed the room, yet they failed to meet those of her guests. With visible effort, she rose, aura trembling, but begrudgingly resolute. "It was not meant to be like this, mon cher ami," she addressed Poirot. "My past," she hesitated, a dainty hand clutching her heart. "It beckons with shades of regrets. Dark, twisted. They have returned, it seems, with venomous intentions." "A most alarming sentiment indeed," Poirot replied, his voice a melodic contrast to the turmoil around them. "But to understand the present, we must illuminate the shadows of the past." With those words, the still air shifted, and uncertainty clung like a fog, threading through the veins of the four tortured souls, clamoring to maintain their facades. Intrigued, Poirot began to probe the depths of this unfolding enigma. He journeyed toward the study where Richard had met his untimely end, accompanied by the others, keenly attuned to the small indicators of unspoken animosities and fragile alliances. A stark silence enveloped the atmosphere like a shroud, and Poirot focused on the overturned chair, a telltale symbol of struggle, yet feeling the pulse of the room for more than mere physical disturbances. "Mon ami," Poirot pondered aloud, surveying the disarray. "Who here harbors a vendetta against our deceased friend? Can it be jealousy, greed, or merely the ripples of unrequited love?" The decade-old wounds began to fester anew as he continued to piece together their pasts, moving, silently his mind calculating. "Charles," he began, a gentle but piercing voice, "you hesitated in identifying your familiarity with Mr. Atherton. I wonder why." Charles flinched, sweat beading on his brow. I didn't want to mention," he faltered, voice cracking. "I owed him money." "Ah, debts can lead to desperation," Poirot mused, adjusting his bow tie, his brow furrowed with thought. But in his mind he was grappling with the revelation that had twinged at his senses. The shadows darted, like specters as he delivered prudent inquiries, revealing resentments buried deeply in the fabric of their connections. Miss Eleanor greeted Poirot's probing with measured breath. "What does it matter? Mr. Atherton assisted me during difficult times, yet it was a friendship forged from exploitation." She paused, and a brief glimmer in her steely gaze sparked an uncharacteristic vulnerability. This was a woman whose past had rotted quietly in silence, a deception wrapped elegantly in charm, and Poirot wondered how long she could maintain her pristine mask. "A hidden truth, perhaps?" Poirot queried softly, watching for cracks in her facade. They lingered, edging ever closer to revelations that would cut deeper still. As he catalogued their confessions, he returned to Lady Agatha. "Madame, what shadows lie buried in your memories? I feel a flicker of fear that indicates more than grief." Her laughter resonated eerily. "Poirot, you are sure of yourselves, but memories, they flutter as phantoms. Richard sought to expose something I buried long ago." The remark hung heavily in the air, which seemed to shudder as she spoke, revealing the weight of secrets ingrained in the essence of their entangled lives. But just as Poirot began to unravel the skein, a chilling wind rattled the leaded glass panes, and the lights momentarily flickered. In that brief darkness, Poirot glimpsed Charles darting out of the room, while Eleanor's lips curled into a sardonic smile that was unsettling, enough to steal his breath away. With the storm shaking the foundations of the manor, Poirot commanded all convicts into the drawing room, a crucible for their fraught confessions and sins. "You see, ma très chère, the truth is seldom singular, yet its jagged edges cut through lies," he intoned gravely, letting his gaze linger on each, drawing them into a web of acknowledgments. "Truth lies hidden under layers, like your fractured souls beneath your polished exteriors." Just then, another twist emerged from the shadows as Poirot directed attention to a letter, hastily concealed in one of Lady Agatha's storied books. "This, madame, reveals more than you allowed. Secrets buried, lies forged in desperation." The tension reached a heartbreaking crescendo as fingers pointed and guilt spiraled. In a final revelation, Poirot unveiled that Charles had no debts. Rather, he had been the illegitimate child of Richard Atherton, his true father, a secret agonizingly unfurling. Richard's return represented not just old debts but accusations against Lady Agatha, who had crafted her life bearing truths of an affair that shamed her long ago. Tears flowed freely as Poirot linked the puzzle pieces into a grand portrait of betrayal and twisted love, unveiling the fabric of emotional entanglement and desperation. As the storm abated, so too did all illusions of innocence. The heart, it deceives us endlessly, showing us only what we wish to see, Poirot concluded, leaving a shivering silence in its wake. And sometimes those shadows we hide can bring us not simply sorrow, but death. His final words echoed through the manor like a requiem, leaving his audience breathless, bound inexorably by a cruel twist of fate woven tightly around their shared past. Chapter 3: The Whispered Secret. A sinister silence enveloped the dimly lit drawing room, pierced only by the crackling of the dying fire, as shadows danced across the brittle wallpaper, creating phantoms of long-held regrets. An unexpected scream had shattered the tranquility of the night, sending a shiver through the very heart of the ancient manor. It belonged to Lady Agatha. She had stumbled upon a revelation that would alter the precarious balance of their already tumultuous gathering. Poirot, ever the stalwart observer, recognized the urgency in the air. A revelation yet unspoken, potent in its implications. Out in the swirling mists of confusion, the storm outside raged with unrestrained fury, each clap of thunder a herald of the chaos within. Poirot's sharp mind dissected the tension. Lady Agatha, fraught with fear and trembling, stood paralyzed at the threshold, gaze locked upon the shattered remains of a porcelain figurine depicting a mourning angel, a once-cherished relic of her friend Richard. What secrets, Poirot pondered, did this figurine whisper? Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he murmured to himself, the wheels of his intellect turning with purpose. The room was a tableau of fraught emotions, each inhabitant entangled in a web woven from deception and despair. Miss Eleanor stood aloof, eyes narrowing as she scrutinized Lady Agatha's reaction. Charles gaped, muttering incoherently about the curse of the manor, while a vein of suspicion curled through the very fabric of their gathering. Underneath their polished exteriors lay festering wounds, desperate to remain hidden. Poirot took a measured breath, feeling every heartbeat pulse with the urgency of uncovering their whispered secrets. "Now, dear friends," Poirot began, his voice a gentle command that drew their gazes like moths to a flame. "Such chaos doth not emerge without purpose. What I ask has cast this pall of dread upon our evening? What unseen hands press upon your souls?" Lady Agatha's gaze flickered, a fleeting moment of vulnerability breaking through her poised facade. "It is too late, Poirot. Richard was seeking to expose a truth about our past, and now, I fear..." Her voice trailed off, laden with an unspoken terror that imbued the air with nerve-wracking tension. Poirot stepped forward, his eyes glinting like twin daggers in the glow of the firelight. "Expose what, madame? There lies mystery in your words." The others shifted nervously, and as he gazed from one to another, he detected the first subtle tremor of betrayal buried beneath the surface. "It involves a secret," Eleanor interjected, her voice layered with the displeasure of long-buried grievances. "Lady Agatha harbors a wordless guilt, one that could unravel all that she has woven so carefully." She leaned forward, an imperceptible smirk playing at her lips, as if the mere suggestion of Lady Agatha's vulnerability provided her a momentary sense of triumph. Charles, radiating anxiety, interjected fiercely. "Whatever it is, it might as well be your end, Agatha. The past has a way of haunting us, and Richard was relentless." Poirot noted the crack in Charles's voice, an undertone laced with palpable fear. He sensed the potency of their shared history engaging in a desperate tango. Revelations awaited. As the storm howled outside, Poirot felt the urgency gather momentum. It was time to uncover the cluttered truths obscured in layers of time-worn silence. Thus he led the trio into the stillness of the library, a sanctuary filled with the whispered promises of dusty tomes. The air was thick with tension, and Poirot approached a familiar volume, one that harbored Lady Agatha's secrets within its pages. Surveying the shelves, Poirot's gaze landed upon another porcelain angel, untouched but for a thin layer of dust. A figurine. He spoke deliberately, pacing toward it as shadows cascaded over his figure. One that once cradled memories now laced with malice. An extension of you, Lady Agatha. He pulled the book from the shelf, its spine cracked open, emitting a sigh of reluctance as it revealed a hidden compartment. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The winds outside howling echoed the internal storm brewing among them. As Poirot extracted an envelope, a letter yellowed with age, an unsettling realization gripped him. The contents contained a confession, layered in anguish, a love letter addressed to Richard, intricately tied to a past entwined with Gabriel, a man no one dared mention in polite company. He was Lady Agatha's first love, and a ghost that had returned to haunt her. A collective hush fell upon the gathering when the letter was read. Richard discovered. You had deceived him, Agatha, Poirot remarked, gesturing to the letter. He confronted you not merely to seek revenge, but to unveil the veil you so carefully crafted. But you must understand, dear lady, your heart's shadows project far beyond mere affairs. The gravity of his words pressed upon them like an oppressive weight, revealing the consequences of buried truths. Just then, as suspense thickened, a voice from the shadows countered Poirot's exposition. You speak of love letters and betrayal, yet ignore the knife hidden beneath your pretty words, Poirot, Eleanor hissed, a dangerous glint shimmering in her eyes. Do you think I would allow my past to be dredged up without defending myself? Richard was no innocent, but a vessel through which deeper currents flowed. With a swift motion, Poirot pivoted, his eyes narrowing as he assessed her stance. The jagged edges of Eleanor's persona had revealed a vulnerability. Indeed, yet one must ask, what became of Richard's secrets? That might tie you together in darkness? A moment passed. Heartbeats drumming the uncertain rhythm of revelation as they returned to the unsettling silence enfolding them. In a moment that cast the room into chiaroscuro, Charles seized the opportunity. I suspected you were behind Richard's murder, he accused, voice pitching upwards with anguish. You always were the cleverest, always hiding behind your mask. The tension snapped like a taut string, revealing the carefully wrapped layers of betrayal held by each party. Poirot felt the suspense broil, culprits revealing themselves in a spectral dance. But a final piece of this heart-wrenching puzzle remained elusive, overshadowing their accusations. With the flame of realization illuminating the darkness once more, Poirot adjusted his bow tie. It is not merely love and betrayal that taint these walls, he began, his tone incongruently calm amidst their mounting hysteria. For you see, the greater betrayal springs, not from betrayal's lips, but from bloodlines intertwined, a phantom whose very existence breathes oxygen to your deepest fears. The room fell silent, the conviction of his words sinking in, resonating through them. Poirot revealed at last the hidden truth. Eleanor was, in fact, the daughter of Gabriel, a figure whose forbidden love festered into jealousy and vengeance, an identity unearthed. You sought to shield yourself beneath Lady Agatha's shadow. It was your hand that ensured Richard's, and in the belief that the truth would finally emerge. Yet, poor soul, it is you who remained ensnared beneath the weight of your lineage, your very existence spiraling toward ruin. Gas hung in the air, like the scent of gunpowder lingering after a shot. The whispers of the past crescendoed as Eleanor crumbled, her emotions laid bare amongst the flickering candlelight. As Poirot concluded his exposition, a haunting silence filled the room, echoing like a solemn requiem. Remember, my friends, the heart, it deceives us endlessly, showing us only what we wish to see. In the end, it is not the secrets we cherish that bring us down. It is the whispered truths we refuse to acknowledge that await us like ravenous wolves. The magniloquent echo of his last words lingered long after, unraveling the tangled threads of their fates, as the rain-soaked tempest relented, leaving only silence and shadows sprawled across the history of those bound together in irrevocable trauma. Chapter 4. A crime. Unveiled. The shadows clasped the corners of the room as if to conceal a dreadful truth, waiting to erupt into chaos. An echoing scream fractured the stillness of the night, reverberating through the dimly lit corridors of the manor that had become a tomb for unspoken fears. The lightning flashed nearly synchronously with the shatter of a lantern, illuminating the once sacred gathering, but now only revealing aghast faces frozen in horror, like portraits captured in a wretched moment of recognition. The storm mirrored the tempest raging inside Lady Agatha, the anguish unmistakable upon her visage as she collapsed to the ground, the flickering candlelight casting unsettling shadows on the walls, dancing around that which they dared not face. In the chaos, Poirot stood apart, a bulwark of serenity cloaked in a stylishly tailored suit. The outburst had taken hold, a jarring tempest of emotions, yet his mind honed in on every subtle detail. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, he mused softly, his eyes sweeping across the room of tense faces. Lady Agatha, pale and breathless, had discovered the lifeless body of Miss Eleanor, sprawled beneath the very porcelain figurine that had earlier danced upon their conversation, a cruel irony that flickered in Poirot's astute mind. Forgive, mes amis, but I must ascertain something. Who amongst you holds the blessing of motive strong enough to commit such a foul deed? He inquired smoothly, turning his scholarly gaze upon Charles, who was trembling violently, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Charles had always coveted Eleanor's secretive beauty, yet destruction seemed incompatible with his nature. I was in the garden, lost in thought. I could not have, he stammered pitifully, glancing nervously toward Agatha, who had sunk into a nearby chair, her hands trembling as they gripped the armrest. Poirot's attention shifted to Lady Agatha, her facade of composure cracking under the weight of raw, emotional exposure. You knew, did you not? A dark past, perhaps entwined with Eleanor's existence. How strange she should die in such sinister proximity to you. She stared ahead, eyes glazed as memories surged unbidden, of passion, betrayal, in the shadows that clung to her like cobwebs. Richard's specter haunts me still, Poirot. It seems love has a way of staining the hands, she whispered, breaking the tension, though Poirot sensed an inclination to withhold a storm of truths buried beneath layers of guilt. And as he sifted through the waters of their emotions, another figure emerged from the encroach of darkness. Mr. Cedric, Eleanor's estranged brother, cloaked in suspicion, a storm's aftermath etched upon his rugged features, recently returned from the East after years apart. I was in the village. I came back to save her, he claimed, bitterness coiling in his words as he stepped forward. You all knew how dangerous Richard was. I warned her. She should have listened, Poirot observed subtly as Cedric's fist clenched, an unrefined passion that reeked of family loyalty, tangled with resentment. But Cedric, surely you would not harm your sister to shield her from past fears. He pressed delicately, noting the glint of desperation flashing in Cedric's eyes. As the storm brewed outside, a foamy tide of accusations began to mount within the room, swirling amidst the flickering candle flames. Poirot, the astute puppeteer of this dark masquerade, called for silence, his tone unwavering. We must not forget the virtue of clarity amongst chaos. I must examine the remains of the dear Miss Eleanor. In a deliberate motion, he moved toward her, kneeling beside the cold, lifeless frame, and at once his gaze caught something curious. A single lavender petal nestled within the folds of her dress, a talismanic echo of love long past. The evening unfolded, an exercise in scrutinizing fractured truths as Poirot navigated through the strands entwined within the crime. He meticulously queried each suspect, unearthing fragments of their lives. Lady Agatha spoke of whispers carried on the wind, of memories entwined with a past lover named Gabriel, entwining her with Eleanor, unbeknown to her. The last time we spoke, she hinted at a secret that could shatter our lives, she lamented, the anguish raw as they were forced to confront the specter of their human frailty, echoes of past transgressions now colliding with present unforgiveness. Charles's anxious laughter did little to hide his fear. You think I would kill her? I adored her. What secrets could have been worth her life? He quipped, yet the edge of his voice revealed an unsettling truth. Love intertwines easily with envy, ripping relationships apart. Poirot's eyes narrowed imperceptibly, catching each tremor of a hand, the brokenness washing over them like rainwater. With measured cadence, he pieced together the puzzle, navigating through layers of plausible deceit, yet confronted by contradictory sentiments. The atmosphere was suffocating, a shroud of despair clinging to every interaction. Poirot noted the way Cedric brushed his hand against his collar when trembling, a touch of guilt mixing with his accusation of Lady Agatha, where passion and loyalty unearthed deceptive undercurrents. And then, amidst a tableau of confused motives, emerged the illusion, an unexpected echo of a lost messenger. I found a letter, the very night before tragedy struck, Poirot announced suddenly, reclaiming their attention. It reveals an address, a rendezvous between Eleanor and Richard, where secrets bloomed into something far darker. Gasps flared, and the gathered retreated into their own turmoil as he revealed at last that Eleanor sought Emma, a sister lost years prior in the tides of family bitter ascent. The truth clawed toward clarity in the dim confines of the manor. You have all played your part in her tragedy, yet I find the one who pulls the strings far darker still, he stated, watching emotions flicker in their gaze as shadows steeped deeper into their shared history. Each crime unveiled reflected back, simmering under the layers of mistrust and betrayal, entangled within familial loyalty. Poirot straightened as he seized the moment of revelation. It is time for you to truthfully confess, Cedric. Your desire to protect Eleanor turned fatal when you discovered that she intended to forsake your family's legacy to seek connection with a ghost. Cedric gaped, eyes wide with shock, before retreating into his silence like a shell. The weight of betrayal bore down upon them, echoing through the halls and clanging like a church bell to announce final absolution. In the lingering silence, as the storm outside bellowed its final fury, Poirot raised a solemn finger to seal their collective fates. The heart, it compels us to take flight when entangled truths threaten our serene veneer. Yet it is grief that unfurls into betrayal through the threads of love, binding together destinies for eternity. The room fell into darkness, a shroud of despair swirling like the shadows around them, leaving only echoing truths reverberating through the foundations of their splintered souls as they faced the reckoning of their actions. A crime unveiled. Chapter 5. The Missing Alibi. A jagged flash of lightning illuminated the grim facade of the old manor, casting elongated shadows that danced like specters against the stone walls. In the stillness that followed, an anguished wail echoed through the corridors, its source a mournful cry, a gossamer lament for everything lost. The inhabitants of the house stood paralyzed, staring with horror as the reality of murder cloaked them in its heavy shroud. Eleanor lay still, the haunting lavender petal nestled against her heartless facade, leaving despair as thick as fog in the stunned air. Poirot, ever the embodiment of poise amidst chaos, surveyed the room, his finely tuned instincts catching every ripple of emotion, each furtive glance exchanged, every trembling sigh, as if he were a maestro conducting an orchestra of treachery. Ah, mon ami, the human heart hides many things, yet it is the absence of that which should have been revealed that lingers most disturbingly, he murmured under his breath, his mind racing to unravel the strands of despair tightening within those walls. As the tempest raged outside, the gathered souls, Lady Agatha, now pale as death, Cedric, her estranged brother, still harboring embers of unguarded sorrow, and Charles, the once adoring friend, were entangled in their own web of fragmented intentions. They were marked by suspicion, each carrying within their hearts a secret that threatened to unravel them. Lady Agatha, with her tangled history of forbidden love, bore a chilling trace of guilt etched into her very being. Cedric, though cloaked in protective zeal, hid not only familial loyalty, but a fierce resentment toward the very sister he sought to redeem. Charles, too, radiated a disquieting energy, as if love had morphed into something darker, something destructive. The gale howled beyond the manor's thick walls, whispering the tales of longing and loss that echoed within. Poirot felt the tempest not merely outside, but within the hearts of those who stood before him. Each was marked by unvoiced regrets and darkened truths, a confluence of emotions the likes of which rendered truth elusive. You all know what you fear most, yet it eludes you. Each of you claims innocence as though it were a shield. But tell me, he began, his voice firm but laden with compassion, where, I ask you, did each of you take shelter from this storm? The questions fell like stones, heavier than anticipated. I was with Charles in the garden, keeping watch over the house, Lady Agatha responded at once, her sigh a tremor in the enveloping silence. Cedric followed, a hardened bravado, barely concealing the tremors of fear. I was in the village in search of someone. Anyone who might help my sister rescue herself from their past. His voice cracked at that. A plea and an accusation all at once. Charles stumbled over his words. I was anxious, waiting for news for Eleanor. His sincerity felt like a veneer, concealing deeper desires that, under such scrutiny, seemed to curl away and evaporate. Poirot, undaunted by their discord, pieced together their disparate narratives, noticing the differences, the fissures of truth hiding behind boldly proclaimed alibis. Ah, but the dance of deception is most complex, is it not? We deceive others, yet we deceive ourselves far more, he pondered, wishing he could extract their nightmares in gentle whispers rather than acerbic proclamations. The investigation began to yield its fruits. Poirot began examining the remnants of the scene, the broken lanterns, the scattered remnants of the evening's once joyous gathering, and then, within the folds of Eleanor's dress, he uncovered the abandoned letter bearing an address, one that hinted at a hidden rendezvous entwined with the shadows of danger. A clandestine meeting, perhaps, he intoned, letting his gaze linger over the three of them, who suddenly seemed to shrink beneath the weight of confession. As he pursued answers, Poirot unwound a tapestry of betrayal. Cedric spoke of his sister's plans for the future, of aspirations beyond the family's grasp, a world filled with freedom untethered by the shackles of their legacy. Lady Agatha, listening intently, betrayed a flicker of remorse in her eyes, one that spoke of paths not taken, choices laden with dark memories. I warned her of Richard's danger, yet she would not heed. She believed love could shield her. Cedric lashed out, his anger ignited as tensions simmered between them. Tell me, Cedric, Poirot urged, what if your desire to save her transformed into a compulsion to protect your family at any cost? Isn't that the darker truth that lurks beneath your heart? With every indiscernible quiver of his suspect's voice, Poirot noted when each individual wrestled with their own haunting conscience. As hope matured within the shadows, a startling twist unraveled the taut yarn of his investigation. A chime echoed from the grandfather clock, a reminder of time slipping through their fingers like sand on a stormy shore. A distraction. Perhaps the missing alibi speaks instead of your shared apparatus of delusion, Poirot proclaimed, a glimmer of realization cracking through the chaos. But I must beware. Could the shadows simply be misled? His questions danced between their anguished hearts, yet the uncertainty layered his thoughts. Each candidate bore their burdens, further fueling the fire of emotional inner turmoil. All began to appear suspect, each motive flaring under Poirot's scrutinizing gaze. Yet it was Cedric, a tempest of unresolved grief, who faltered, the storm within him becoming too great to contain. I could not bear the you-eyed, or I thought she had to listen. No one else understood, but I... His voice broke, revealing a glimpse of something darker, something that laid bare unguarded sorrow. And then, like a chilling whisper of fate, Poirot unraveled the truth within the labyrinth of lies, weaving betrayal back to its source with eloquence. In your haste to save her, you could not confront her heart's true yearning, but it is the love that turns foul that bears the sharper edge. He laid bare the hidden identity, a dark, intimate truth born of unresolved love and jealousy, the twisted realization that it was not merely a sibling's loyalty driving Cedric, but a jealousy veiled under the pretense of familial commitment. Gasps emerged, air thick with the weight of revelation as the storm outside finally ebbed. The chilling silence settled, the echo of truth now amongst them, a darkness birthed in protective lies that had spiraled beyond control. Poirot straightened, a harbinger of justice in that moment, and with an unwavering tone, he sealed their collective fates. The heart, it is the most treacherous of instruments. It leads us into oblivion. Remember, my friends, the shadows we cast may often conceal the very truth we are desperate to reveal. With that, Poirot left them in the remnants of their sorrow, a storm of revelations unleashed amidst the ashes of their broken bonds, forever altered by the revelation of what love could rend apart in its blind pursuit of salvation. Chapter 6. An Unexpected Confession. The wind howled like a mournful spirit as it swept through the ancient trees that encircled the manor, cloaking its secrets in shadows. A single flicker of lightning illuminated the windows, revealing a gaunt figure standing at the edge of the garden, drenched and trembling. A figure that seemed suspended between fear and resignation, teetering on the brink of revelation. Poirot, observing from the mercy of the dimly lit parlor, felt the pulse of eerie anticipation surge within him, a tangible foreshadowing of the chaos yet to unfold. As the thunder cracked overhead, the distraught visage of Lady Agatha, her expression painted with fear and anguish, flickered into view alongside her brother, Cedric, whose countenance oscillated between fury and regret. In the corner, Charles shifted, unease writhing beneath his polished facade as the trio grappled with the weight of Eleanor's recent demise. Their lives had become irreversibly entangled within a narrative soaked in intrigue and treachery. Poirot, the detached observer, noticed the tremor in Lady Agatha's hand, the tense set of Cedric's jaw, and the way Charles's fingers nervously brushed against a pocket, akin to a child clutching a forbidden secret. Mon ami, Poirot mused softly to himself, his mind already racing with the essence of their tangled emotions. The heart often acts as the artisan of its own design. How unlike the fertile ground of reason? The diminishing candlelight flickered precariously, casting long shadows upon the walls, where remnants of laughter and joy danced mockingly in opposition to the current air of despair. Here, in this forsaken manor, truth and deceit swirled in a delicate embrace, and Poirot resolved to untangle their luminous threads from the darkness enveloping them. As Poirot began his inquiries, the tempest beyond bore witness to their unraveling. "Tell me," he said gently, tangibly urging them to confront their own fears. "Do you believe that by shielding your hearts you may indeed uncover the essence of truth?" The room quelled under the weight of his question, and though he hoped to extract confessions with gentle nudges, what he saw was a tapestry of sturdy silences and shifting glances, each suspect burdened with unspoken guilt. "Lady Agatha, you first," Poirot requested, his eyes intentionally lingering on her fragile form. The ether between them thickened as she took a faltering breath, the shadows of morning obscuring her truth. "I had left the gathering to seek solace in the garden," she said hesitantly, her voice barely audible over the billowing tempest. I saw Cedric before the tragedy unfolded." Cedric, however, winced at her admission, the sudden interruption of his sister's narrative sparking a rift of silent accusation between them. "Ah, Cedric, is it true?" Poirot pressed, causing him to recoil slightly. "You too were part of the evening, cloaked in rebellion? Where did you take refuge amidst the storm?" A flicker of disbelief surfaced on Cedric's face, revealing shades of anger and betrayal that pulsed beneath the surface. "I was at the village. I sought help for Eleanor," he proclaimed, fervently gripping the armrest of a chair. "Yet the people I consulted were unaware of her plight." A glimmer of suspicion crossed Poirot's gaze, the fabric of that night growing increasingly complex. Poirot's sharp intellect did not allow him to overlook the nuances of their claims, nor the undercurrents marked by guilt and fear. Might it be, my friends, that the truth takes flight, avoiding the very hearts that desperately seek to claim it? His gaze danced among the gathered souls who exchanged a glance, like prey feeling the keen eyes of a predator. As the investigation proceeded, Poirot turned the delicate machinery of uncovering motives. Each suspect was cloaked in darker shades of desperation, a shared thread of yearning that bound them loosely together but held sharp edges. Agatha's romantic entanglement with Richard surfaced, weaving insecurities born from a history marred by secrecy. Cedric's defensive loyalty concealed a boiling resentment over Eleanor's ambitions, a desire that threatened the very foundations of their familial legacy. And so too was Charles, caught in a vortex of misplaced affection, his concern for Eleanor now tinted by jealousy and unfulfilled desires. What if the shelter you all espouse is but a mirage? Poirot's voice sliced through the tension like a clear bell in the night. Could it be that it was not the wind or the rain that pulled you away, but rather the shadows of your very own hearts? The insinuation twisted through the room, and the atmosphere thickened, laden with the fear of exposure. Yet amongst the storm of elusive clues and veiled motives, Poirot found himself momentarily diverted by a particularly tantalizing red herring, a battered book lying discreetly on an ornate table, its margins marked with notes that detailed intimate thoughts Eleanor had shared with Lady Agatha. A panicked gasp reverberated through the room as Poirot lifted the tome, eyes alight with the abrupt flurry of interconnected revelations. Ah, a fragment of forgotten correspondence, perhaps? He mused, conversing with himself, his inner voice echoing the sentiment of profound betrayal that reverberated through space. At first glance, the pages suggested a push towards Eleanor's newfound quest for a liberated existence, but as Poirot scanned, further a shocking realization dawned. Tucked amid the entries was a fragility, a fledgling love letter to the very Richard that had entangled them all in his suffocating embrace. It seems, Poirot declared with growing intensity, that our dear Eleanor perhaps did not venture in ignorance, but willingly stepped into the embrace of peril. A fluctuating tension hung in the air, and as Cedric's face blanched with realization, it culminated in an explosive confession. His fervent desire to save Eleanor had spiraled too deeply into darkness. "I sought to protect you," he burst forth, crushing the fragile veneer of familial love. "But love breeds desperation. In my haste, I misjudged her heart's true inclination." The storm outside was a mere whisper compared to the tumultuous waves of anguish that crashed in that instant, reverberating in Cedric's admission, layered with truth and regret. Yet as Poirot pivoted, a final twist awaited him. Staring straight into Charles's trembling eyes, he saw a glimmer of something unbearable, an unguessed betrayal that had the power to shatter the narrative once more. "But you, Charles, dear friend," he questioned, the tremor in his voice subdued but deliberate. "What of your own affections, hidden beneath layers of complicated fidelity?" Charles hesitated, the shadows hardening around him, before finally succumbing to despair. "I did not intend for any of this. I merely adored her from afar." His words, a grotesque amalgamation of passion and fear, spilled forth, revealing his own emotional depths as if in a fevered confession. The very fabric of their intertwined existence began to unravel, revealing not just a shared tragedy, but a poisoned well of affection and betrayal. Poirot, steering the ship through the tempest, realized that this was more than an unraveling mystery. It was a tragic play of human emotion exposed. In the end, it is not the shadows we fear that reach out to ensnare us, but our very own hearts, twisted and convoluted in their pursuit of that elusive light. With that profound observation lingering in the poignant air, the truth emerged from their depths. Where once they had concealed darkness, now it surged forth, unwilling to remain hidden in the shade. The revealing of emotions, far more complex than mere suspicion or love, culminated as the final storm drew near, the gentle touch of truth sweeping through the depths of their souls. In that room, echoing against the backdrop of nature's fury, Poirot stood firm, his heart echoing the throbs of reality. As we tread this mercurial path of love and loss, remember, those shadows cast by our hearts may linger forever. And with a final flicker of candlelight, the essence of truth hovered among them, binding their fates amidst the stormy embrace of despair. Chapter 7. The Second Drawing Room. The room was draped in shadows, each flicker of the dying fire casting unsteady silhouettes against the walls, as though ghosts of betrayals lingered. In the corners, the air was thick with tension, a palpable heaviness that seemed to suffocate the very essence of life within the ancient manor. Poirot stepped into the second drawing room, the murmurs of the tempest outside muffled beneath the weight of discovery. It was then that he found her, Lady Agatha, standing at the window, peering into the darkness, hands trembling at her sides. The moment she turned, a glimmer in her eye spoke volumes of unquenchable fear and doubt. Mon ami, he thought to himself, the heart is indeed a treacherous vessel. What secrets lie beneath her facade? A deep breath steadied his thoughts. There was much work to be done, and the truth was waiting, hidden amidst the complex emotions swirling around them. The storm outside raged on, mirroring the chaos within this abode of secrets. Lady Agatha's soft voice broke through the oppressive silence. Poirot, I fear there are shades of truth we may never unveil. The flickering candlelight illuminated, her pale face revealing the deep furrow of worry etched upon her brow. Just then, Cedric entered, dripping with the remnants of the storm. He paused, his gaze darting nervously between Agatha and Poirot, clearly shaken. His breaths were ragged, the lines of despair etched deeper than ever. I've heard whispers, he stammered, of unseen threats lurking in our midst. Ah, but the shadows hide more than we can imagine, Poirot interjected, his mind already racing through the possibilities that filled the air with foreboding. He recalled the earlier conversations, Lady Agatha's burgeoning romance with Richard, Cedric's defensive loyalty over Eleanor, and the tensioned thread binding them to Charles, now an unseen element yet to be reintroduced into this delicate fabric of intimacy and betrayal. Let us take our seats, for the storm outside pales in comparison to the tempest within. The three of them gathered in a circle, the ornate furniture shadowing their silhouettes as Poirot leaned forward, his pupils narrowing in focus. Tell me, dear friends, what truly transpires when the heart seeks shelter? Is it possible that your affections may have intertwined in a web of misguided intentions? He scrutinized their reactions, the slight flare of Cedric's nostrils, the tense grip of Lady Agatha on the chair. I loved Eleanor, Lady Agatha confessed, her voice trembling. But I feared the chasm of jealousy that would follow, for she held my heart's desires in her hands. Palpable silence ensued, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder, as her admission echoed in the room like a gunshot in a quiet place. Cedric inhaled sharply, fury and sorrow warring within his chest. You knew how she suffered. Eleanor's heart was held captive, Agatha. The accusation hung heavy, and Poirot, ever the keen observer, noted the involuntary flinch across Lady Agatha's face. Was it guilt she feigned, or perhaps a fear of exposing deeper secrets? With a measured tone, Poirot proposed, might it be prudent to revisit the past? A tapestry woven with threads so deeply intertwined must be examined closely lest we miss the design illuminating their darkness. As if on cue, footsteps echoed from the hall, and Charles appeared, his demeanor unusually flustered. He hesitated at the threshold, glancing between Agatha and Cedric. Apologies, I fear I may have inadvertently eavesdropped. The tension in this house is suffocating. Poirot's eyes twinkled with the thrill of investigation, and he wasted no time in addressing the newest member of their dimly lit congregation. Ah, but dear Charles, whatever is your part in this narrative, you too were beset by a form of obsession, love twisted beneath layers of desire and paralyzing fear, Poirot observed, his voice smooth, poised like a conductor guiding an orchestra through chaotic crescendos. I was but an admirer, Charles countered, though his voice lacked conviction, revealing deeper wounds yet to heal. Both of you should have seen her charm, her brilliance. In my silence, I protected her from the world's judgments, even from you, Cedric. With a wave of his hand, Poirot implored them to examine the shadows swelling just outside the light of reason. Do you not find it curious that each of you bears a heavy heart? Each believes the other holds the key to Eleanor's tangled fate. In that moment, Poirot's gaze narrowed, shifting to the mantelpiece adorned with trinkets of memories, the shattered vase that once stood tall, a remnant of happier times. now speckled with flaws mirroring their own lives. Tell me, what of last evening? The abandoned garden? What shadows danced there? Agatha recoiled, her confession crumbling under the weight of emerging revelations. I went to find Eleanor. I wanted to reassure her she was not alone, but I found nothing but darkness. Another dark whisper among the trees, then. Cedric surged forward, his fury coating every syllable. And you believe yourself blameless, Agatha. Perhaps I found you there, leading her deeper into the shadows. Poirot remained composed, dissecting their emotions as they spiraled further into chaos. While the truth lay dormant, aching to be unveiled, a deeper betrayal lingered just at the fringes of their confessions. What of the letter? Poirot inquired, regarding Lady Agatha with keen interest. The love letter Eleanor penned, an innocent message or a sinister string pulling you toward the shadows? As tension mounted, a twist slipped through the fabric of their collective consciousness. The letter, Cedric uttered, brow furrowing in realization. No one would write so intimately without purpose. As Poirot leaned closer, he could see the effects of that turmoil morphing into volatility. His deductions were sharp, intricately threading through layers that were both personal and convoluted. Agatha's fear slowly transformed into desperation, and in that moment she remarked, "But she loved, at least, that's what she told me before the tragedy. I did not know she would succumb to Peril's embrace." A shudder coursed through the room, synchronous with the storm outside. Poirot sensed the winds of change, their labyrinthine loyalties shifting like the very storm within. The atmosphere grew thick, yet the storm of truth broke and unveiled its dark gaze, drawing in those who sought to mask their most shameful truths. It was a glimpse into the heart of betrayal when Poirot concluded, "Ah, there lies your pivotal truth." Each felt they were braced against a tempest, each thinking themselves savior even as the hands of love turned to blades. His observation sliced through the haze. With the puzzle laid bare, Charles, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions, imploded. "No, it was I who loved her. The night she was taken from us. The letters, the secrecy. It was I who pushed her towards her peril." His confession echoed chillingly against the softened crackle of the fireplace. A silence enveloped them. Poirot pondered the intricate web they had woven together, tangled within the arms of love and jealousy that bore such bitter fruit. And so in the throes of your own hearts, you turned on one another. The heavy pause revealed the deeper, painful truth. Each of them had painted themselves, unaware, in shades of darkness that ultimately left them shattered. Poirot's breath quickened, sensing revelation in the air. In your pursuit of uncovering the blame, dear friends, you cast aside your very essence. For it is not only love that drives us to despair, but the betrayal of unspoken fears that ensnares us all in a cycle of suffering. As Poirot prepared to leave the room, shadows danced across the walls, retreating back into darkness. He turned to them with almost tender gaze, a harbinger of truth yet to unfold. Remember, my friends, there lies a darkness within that love can only illuminate so far before it consumes. And with that enigmatic summary echoing in the crackling silence, Poirot stepped back into the storm, leaving the remnants of anguish to swirl behind him. Chapter 8. A Deadly Game of Charades. The clock struck midnight, and the manor echoed with an eerie silence, disrupted only by the distant rumble of thunder. A single candle flickered on the mantel, its wavering flame revealing shadows that danced along the aged walls, as if spirits of the past were bearing witness to the unfolding drama. In the heart of this stormy night, a shriek sliced through the stillness, a cry laden with terror that sent icy fingers down the spine of each occupant within. Lady Agatha found herself before the crimson-stained carpet of the drawing room, eyes wide with fear, frozen in horror as she stared at the lifeless body of Cedric sprawled beneath the chandelier, the once glorious fixture now a harbinger of doom. Ah, the fragility of the human heart. It conceals many a secret, mon ami, Poirot mused, stepping decisively into the dimly lit room, the scent of despair hanging thick in the air. Agatha's trembling hands clutched the edges of her gown, her breath shallow as if the air itself had turned to lead. Charles hovered at the doorway, his face pale, shock mingling with disbelief as he stared at the somber spectacle before him. "What treachery is this?" he whispered, his voice a rasp, echoing the fear that each of them harbored deep within their souls. "Calm yourself, I implore you," Poirot commanded, his presence demanding authority despite the chaos that enveloped them. He approached the scene deliberately, kneeling beside Cedric, his sharp gaze scanning the immediate surroundings. Blood pooled beneath the body, a rich, dark crimson that starkly contrasted with the opulence of the room. It was here, in this grand chamber now marred by tragedy, that lives would irrevocably change. "We must not allow panic to cloud our judgment," Poirot continued, turning his attention back to Agatha and Charles. "Tell me, what events led to this dreadful outcome?" A multitude of emotions flickered across Agatha's features. Anguish, fear, guilt, each one bearing witness to the tangled web of relationships that bound them all. "Cedric, he was protective of Eleanor," she stammered, words spilling forth in a frantic rush. "He often spoke of how we should shield her from the repercussions of our entangled lives. I cannot fathom why he is dead." Charles interjected, a tempest raging in his heart. "Dreadful indeed, but do we not wonder whether his protection veiled his own dark intentions? He had so much to lose, after all. Perhaps he provoked a confrontation from which he could not escape." His eyes darted around, searching for hidden truths amongst the shadows, accusations bubbling just beneath the surface, like a cauldron prepared to boil over. Poirot observed them closely. Their motivations were as intricate as the design on the velvet drapes framing the windows. "Ah, but do we not find irony in the circumstances? Each seems to carry a burden born of sentiment, yet it is the specter of jealousy that taints the air." Stepping back, the detective pondered the complexities of their ties to one another. The threads weaving their fates were as delicate as gossamer, yet strong enough to ensnare the unwary. As suspicion brewed, Poirot summoned Agatha and Charles to recount their movements over the past hours. Agatha's voice quavered. "After dinner we split, but I cannot recall precisely where I went. I was restless. The storm outside mirrored my heart, and..." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "And when I returned, I stumbled upon Cedric, lifeless." Charles stepped closer, indignation etched across his features. "And what of the letter, Agatha?" "You needn't deny it. The passionate correspondence between Cedric and Eleanor may have unveiled hidden resentments." The accusation struck, entwining their lives with threads of bitterness. Agatha recoiled, astonishment and guilt tangled within her expression. Would he risk revealing such intimacy amidst such chaos? "No, I feel him far too honorable for that." Poirot interjected with a calm assuredness. "A man may cloak himself in silence, yet it is often his silence that speaks volumes." He directed his inquiry toward Charles. "And what about you, my dear Charles? You had affections that ran deeper than mere admiration, did you not? I suspected the shadows that enveloped you held more than mere fondness." "I loved her. Yes, I stood on the precipice of revealing my heart to Eleanor, but I did not harm him. My intentions were like the designs of stars, obscured but ever present," he protested, a flicker of sincerity, perhaps desperation, flickering in his eyes. A dangerous game of charades unfolded, each character concealing deeper fears and unfathomable motivations, leading Poirot deftly among the truths that lay hidden beneath layers of sorrow. As he navigated the darkened corners of the drawing room, he stumbled upon a shard of glass infused with blood, remnant of the fractured vase now long forgotten. A symbol of your shattered ties, and yet the beauty shattered lurked within. He whispered, contemplating the implications of betrayal embedded in that splintered piece of evidence. As night deepened, Poirot carefully pieced together the mosaic of half-truths and bitter resentments. Each accusation came forth like a play. Agatha's guilt, Charles's masked devotion, and Cedric's protective demeanor all bore witness to a crumbling edifice. However, in a turn of fate, a revelation struck, as he sensed an unease growing among them. "Ah, my friends," Poirot said, adopting a melodic cadence. What if the charade itself is the very game we've engaged in? A distraction from the truth that demands exposure? The very essence of jealousy, quandary, and a need for salvation, creating a tragic orchestration? Then, just as the storm outside reached a crescendo of fury, Poirot offered a startling discovery. His gaze, like a falcon's, focused sharply on Charles. You, dear man, were not merely an admirer, were you? Your love twisted and turned into something far more sinister. Was it you who penned the letter as a lure to ensnare Cedric, hoping to channel your rivalry into a deadly confrontation? Always the specter of betrayal simmering beneath your intentions? Charles faltered, recognition flashing before his eyes. It was not my intent to harm. I only wished to free Eleanor from the shadows that suffocated her. His desperation erupted like a tempest, revealing the tempestuous emotions that had long festered within. Poirot then turned to Agatha, sadness creeping into his voice. And did you not observe the flames of emotion battering upon the walls of your heart as well? Your tumultuous affection toward Eleanor held a tighter grip than you cared to admit. You too played this deadly game. And as Charles collapsed amidst the realization of his actions, the true nature of the tumult surfaced. The unbridled emotions that had led to Cedric's brutal demise were not mere accidental outcomes, but thorns that sprouted from the very roots of love, jealousy, and betrayal. As Poirot left the shadowy drawing room behind, he reflected somberly upon the delicate threads that held them captive. In life's twisted labyrinth, mon ami, we become the architects of our own ruin. In that moment, he closed the door, leaving behind not just a scene of tragedy, but a haunting silence echoing in the aftermath of a deadly game of charades, where the truth had finally come to light. Chapter 9. The Graffiti Clue. A chilling wind howled through the desolate manor, the storm outside a symphony of thunder and flickering lightning, illuminating the secrets buried within its walls. In the dimly lit hallway, a figure stumbled, colliding with the walnut paneling, a whisper of fear escaping pale lips as the candle's flames sputtered in response. The frail light cast elongated shadows, morphing into grotesque shapes that danced with menace as another scream erupted from the drawing room, a cry that held the weight of despair intermingled with rage. Poirot entered the scene, striding with purpose, his keen eyes absorbing the chaos surrounding him. The drawing room, once a sanctuary of richness and warmth, now lay cloaked in shadows, a canvas of disarray. Cedric's death had stripped the air of warmth, replaced by a suffocating pall of tension. The room was littered with signs of a violent scuffle. A low table lay overturned, and a shattered vase spilled its secrets like blood from an unhealed wound. By the flickering candlelight, Poirot noticed an unusual marking on the wall. An enigmatic streak of red paint, almost resembling graffiti, dripped down like a sinister tear. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, Poirot mused quietly, his mind racing with possibilities. 3 prime suspects hovered around the fringes of the chaos. Lady Agatha, the tormented ex-lover of Cedric, her heart a tempest of fury and grief. Charles, a man of lurking passion whose admiration for Eleanor bordered on obsession. And Eleanor herself, the radiant yet enigmatic flower caught in this unfortunate web of entanglement, with her own agenda cloaked in mystery. Each cast wary glances as Poirot approached, shaking off the chill that had settled within his bones and into the marrow of the room. With a gentle authority, Poirot directed his attention to Agatha first. Her voice trembled as she recounted the events of the evening, her hands wringing together as if they could somehow erase the turmoil swirling inside her. I had just returned from the garden when I saw him, Cedric. He always did have a knack for stirring trouble, but this, she faltered, eyes darting toward the paint, rapid thoughts colliding beneath her calm facade. Surely there should be beauty in life, not brutality. He was always drawn to danger, as if courting it with fervor. Beautiful words masking an ugly truth, ma chérie, Poirot replied thoughtfully. But tell me, what of Charles? His shadow looms large, does it not? Charles's eyes flickered, guilt shrouding him like a shroud, but he quickly regained his composure, stepping forward with a bravado born of desperation. I have no interest in Cedric's games or his manipulations. I sought to protect Eleanor. Alas, Cedric threatened her future, entangled her with his cruel ambitions. The heaviness of his words settled like mist in the air, obscuring the truth. Yet Poirot, ever the calm observer, nurtured a thread of intuition weaving through the chaos. He turned to Eleanor, whose silence bore the weight of unspoken burdens. It would seem that you have a singular gift for casting shadows, my dear. But the question remains, what thoughts danced upon your intellect this night? What say you? Eleanor met his gaze, her eyes glistening with secrets. I would never harm Cedric. He was a man too consumed by ambition. But I would not deny that his attention was, at times, overwhelming, a dangerous obsession that ignited a fire I barely acknowledged. The innuendo in her words hinted at more than mere romantic troubles. With careful grace, Poirot surveyed the crimson graffiti, intrigued by its presence. Tell me, my friends, what significance does this mark hold for each of you? He observed their faces, noting the telltale quivers and fleeting glances that betrayed their feigned indifference. As each suspect whispered their thoughts, a fabric of lies began to unravel. Agatha mentioned overhearing a confrontation on the fateful evening. Charles, with heated passion, claimed it was a plea to Eleanor to escape Cedric's grasp, while Eleanor's unease revealed the complex relationship she shared with both men. Yet amidst these accusations, a deeper truth loomed, half concealed. From the corner of the room, Poirot caught a glimpse of something peculiar, a crumpled piece of paper buried beneath the debris. He retrieved it methodically, unfolding the brittle edges with elegance. The writing, though hasty and erratic, bore a revealing resemblance to Cedric's hand. It held a sketch of the very graffiti on the wall, accompanied by crude annotations that hinted at a connection to secret dealings and quiet pursuits. Ah, the graffiti clue, Poirot uttered under his breath, piecing the puzzle together in his mind. Who could have known of this mark? And why would Cedric feel the need to document it? Could it expose a truth hidden from view? As Poirot deliberated, he discerned threads connecting the menacing scrawl to their dark motives. Yet nothing seemed as it appeared. Even he possessed a glimmer of misinterpretation. Perhaps his own pursuit of the truth had blinded him to the possibility of betrayal so deep it transcended the canvas of bloodshed. In a climactic confrontation, Poirot leaked suspicion as a careful weave of deception. Dear friends, I suspect your motives intertwine far more than you have revealed. Each of you holds a personal vendetta, yet collectively betray one another in the pursuit of deceit. What if this graffiti was not merely a mark, but a confession of sins carried? With panic rising, Agatha interjected, You cannot suggest we are all culpable. Yet human emotions spiral toward betrayal, my dear Agatha, Poirot continued. Jealousy begets misfortune, and in the web of Cedric's demise, each of you carries a shard of responsibility. But just as Poirot was about to connect the threads, a shocking truth emerged. Cedric had discovered the secret love affair between Charles and Eleanor, documented not only in ink spill, but confirmed through the graffiti itself. Charles had embraced both love and the bitter taste of rivalry with Cedric, turning a passion into a venomous prey. Suddenly, Eleanor gasped, revealing a hidden dagger clutched tightly in her grasp. I was not a mere pawn in this game. Cedric pushed me against the wall. It was his intent to ruin us both. The truth unraveled in devastating clarity, leaving the room steeped in a pool of despair. Poirot turned, his heart weighed down by the intricacies of human emotions. Once again, we find that love, tainted by betrayal, can twist the souls into trajectories unforeseen. It is here, dear friends, that our humanity reveals its darkest wrinkles. As shadows fell, Poirot concluded with a heavy heart. In this game of life, I often find that we are architects of our downfall. Cedric's graffiti did not merely mark the wall, it chronicled the decay of trust, forever written in the annals of our hearts. In the aftermath, echoes of their regrets reverberated through the night, each character trapped within their intertwined fates, as Poirot stepped away from the crumbling manor, leaving behind the fragments of a long-forgotten love gone awry. Chapter 10. Betrayal in Plain Sight. A scream punctured the suffocating silence of the manor, echoing through the corridors like the wail of the damned. A figure lurched forward, collapsing against the cold, unforgiving stone wall, hands pressed to a crimson-stained heart. The flicker of candlelight illuminated pale faces twisted in horror as a familiar visage lay sprawled lifelessly on the richly woven carpet below. A once cherished work of art now marred by the violence of betrayal. In that moment, the storm outside unleashed its fury, as if nature itself recoiled from the treachery within. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold of the drawing room, an enigmatic observer, amidst chaos and grief. The shadows seemed to conspire with the storm, wrapping themselves around him like a sinuous cloak, while his keen eyes scanned the scene of despair with purpose. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," he murmured softly, a faint hint of melancholy lacing his words. The disarray of the room was palpable. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, and a subtle scent of something sinister lingered in the air. Three figures emerged from the depths of the shadows, their faces betraying emotions ranging from anguish to hidden malice. The first, Lady Beatrice, once the object of admiration and envy, now quivered at the precipice of a revelation. Gossip had always painted her as the golden girl, the one who could do no wrong. Yet the weight of her past loomed large, for it was whispered that she had secured her position through a web of deceit. Beside her stood Martin, the steadfast friend whose devotion to his childhood companion was unquestionable. Yet a deep-rooted jealousy festered in the recesses of his soul. Finally, there was Evelyn, the enigmatic artist who had captured not only the essence of life in her paintings, but also the affections of both men. It was she who had stirred the tempest that had culminated in tragedy. As Poirot stepped further into the maelstrom, he noted the shattered vase. Flowers once vibrant now reduced to mere remnants of beauty. It was Lady Beatrice who first found her voice amid the clamor. I did not see it coming. How could it be? We were to have a celebration tonight." Her eyes darted nervously, and Poirot observed that her trembling hands clenched the edges of her gown, as if seeking solace from the encroaching darkness. "Ah, but my dear Lady Beatrice, the heart often beats to a rhythm that lies beyond our understanding," Poirot replied, his voice calm yet firm. "Tell me, what transpired here? Who possessed a motive strong enough to commit such an abhorrent act?" Evelyn's gaze flickered toward the window, where the storm raged as if mirroring the tempest within. "It was meant to be a night of joy, until he arrived," she whispered, a shiver passing through her. "Cedric could ruin us all with a mere word. His obsession was consuming. I feared for my art, for my passion, for Martine, and for Beatrice." Poirot focused intently on Evelyn, detecting the undercurrents that ran deeper than mere artistic rivalry. "And you believed yourself innocent of responsibility for this affair? Yet passions often blind us to the truth that lies in plain sight," Martin interjected, his voice trembling. "I cared for Cedric. We were like brothers once. I never thought. But how could he threaten Evelyn? The affair was over, and yet he would not relent." His eyes shone with sincerity, but Poirot sensed a crack in the facade. Jealousy crept beneath Martin's loyalty, twisting his affections into something dangerous. Poirot began his investigation, delving deeper into the intricacies of their relationships. He observed the way Lady Beatrice's gaze darted between the two lovers and the corpse. Moments turned to hours as discussions morphed into accusations. Each suspect bore their burdens, yet it was within the writhing chaos that the truth lay concealed. "Consider, my friends, what truly binds you to this tragedy," he noted, his keen eyes catching the subtle twitch in Evelyn's brow. "Perhaps it is not simply a matter of love, but of betrayal and ambition as, well." With careful precision, Poirot outlined the clues scattered throughout the room. The torn page of a letter lay discarded near the fireplace, flames licking at its edges. The ink, smudged and barely decipherable, spoke of unsavory dealings between Cedric and unknown benefactors. Should not such a revelation rattle the foundations of even the most steadfast friendships? Yet the atmosphere became thick with the tension of the unspoken, secrets crouching just beyond the veil. And then a twist emerged, delicate threads intertwining unexpectedly. Beneath the debris, Poirot discovered an unassuming paintbrush, its bristles stained with the vivid crimson of the fresh graffiti, a remnant of the artist's once vibrant expression. Ah, this paints a darker picture than previously considered, he mused, scrutinizing Evelyn with newfound intensity. Could it be that this mark, this blurred boundary between art and emotion, provides insight into the mind of the creator? Was this act a manifestation of yet deeper torment? The tension escalated as each suspect began to sweat under Poirot's scrutinizing gaze. You see, artistry and emotion are but two sides of the same coin, he elaborated, but there are echoes of betrayal woven into the very lines of this composition. An artist often draws from their innermost pain. Just as the pieces began to coalesce, Poirot paused. An epiphany danced tantalizingly at the edge of his understanding. The red herring of Evelyn's artistic passion was intoxicating. Yet as he connected the threads, he realized the true tragedy lay not solely within her realm. It was instead a fatal cocktail of deception, interwoven tightly within the tapestry of human emotions, threatening to suffocate them all. With a gentle yet commanding tone, Poirot proclaimed the collective truth out loud, a revelation that sent ripples through the vortex of gathered souls. Cedric did not perish merely at the cost of jealousy. He was a catalyst, a harbinger of betrayal that ensnared every one of you in its murky depths. Each of your hearts held a piece of this puzzle. Cedric's death, twisted and tragic, was not simply revenge, but a cry resonating through the yearning souls entwined with him. The room fell silent, a heavy air settling with the realization that the roots of betrayal ran deep, concealed behind facades of love and loyalty. Poirot turned to each, allowing them time to digest the harrowing truth that revealed the fragility of human connections. In the end, it was not merely a singular act of violence, but an unraveling of the psychological tapestry we weave through our actions and our passions. As they stood amidst the shadows of Cedric's demise, Poirot left them with a piercing reminder. In the shadows of our desires, we become the architects of our own tragedies. It is thus that betrayal found its way into plain sight. With those parting words echoing through the turmoil of the night, Poirot stepped away from the chaos, leaving behind the scars of love and betrayal entwined, forever etched in the annals of their hearts like the graffiti that marked the walls of their lives. Chapter 11. The Last Word. The air in Cedric's study was thick and charged, as if the shadows themselves conspired against the living. The flickering candlelight danced, revealing corners where darkness lingered, as if unwilling to surrender to the light. The clock ticked steadily, each movement echoing an oppressive silence that held the weight of secrets long buried. It was then that a strange, high-pitched wail cut through the stillness, a sound both chilling and sorrowful, resonating from the depths of Cedric's lifeless form. Hercule Poirot, ever the astute observer, felt the hairs raise on the back of his neck, a visceral indication that within this room, chaos had taken a mortal turn. As he stepped into the room, Poirot noticed the figures gathered around the body, their faces a mix of horror and disbelief, merging into an unsettling mosaic of grief and guilt. Lady Beatrice, her complexion ashen, clutched a silk handkerchief, tears welling in her eyes yet suppressed by a flurry of indignation. Beside her stood Martin, his hands trembling inconspicuously at his sides, the vacant look in his eyes hinting at his internal turmoil. Finally, Evelyn maintained a more composed, if unnervingly serene countenance, her gaze darting furtively, as though seeking to remain unscathed by the collapse of their fragile world. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, Poirot murmured softly, his voice laced with a profound melancholy. The lifelessness of Cedric was not merely the termination of breath, but a canvas on which the essence of betrayal was painted, a sinister depiction that neither love nor friendship could redeem. Who could have committed such an abhorrent act? Lady Beatrice wailed, her voice trembling. We were preparing the soiree. And yet, my dear Lady Beatrice, it appears the celebration has been marred by a more sinister design, Poirot replied coolly, his eyes scanning the room with meticulous precision. Tell me, what transpired in the moments leading to this horrific event? One by one, each character offered fragmented accounts, their words saturated with raw emotion, yet veiled in ambiguity. Lady Beatrice spoke of a burgeoning jealousy towards Cedric, who had retained mastery over their social scene, a power that threatened her prestige. He entrapped all of us. With his charade twisting our natures against one another, she lamented, lowering her gaze, her previous composure now deteriorating. I could not bear the weight of it. Perhaps I wished him harm in my heart. But it was Martin's reaction that intrigued Poirot. He was like a brother to me, he exclaimed vehemently, yet the tremor in his voice betrayed an undercurrent of resentment. I never aspired to harm him. Never. But what if he had sought to destroy everything I loved? What different are we from beasts should such betrayal lurk? Evelyn, as if haunted by a specter, interjected with a tremulous voice. His obsession was relentless, threatening not only my art, but my very soul. He would have cast us aside like pawns in a game. The painter's eyes glimmered with dark intensity, and she stepped closer to Poirot as a sudden realization dawned upon her. He sought control, and we were simply threads to his tapestry of power. As the storm raged outside, Poirot's mind meticulously threaded the ranks of suspicion, each word laced with concealed pain, lust, and ambition. He perceived their anguish not merely as reactions to Cedric's death, but as reflections of their own intertwined fates, each echoing an unspoken truth. Yet among the innocence and guilt, a peculiar clue captured his keen interest. A faint whiff of something acrid hung in the air, something that reeked of deception and deceit. With a deftness born of sharpened instincts, Poirot began his investigation, posing questions that slipped past the bluster of emotion. Let us consider, my dear friends, the mark that Cedric may have left upon your lives. What of this? He gestured towards a shattered bottle on the floor, embedded within shards of glass that glistened ominously. Is not the remnants of wine a symbol of camaraderie turning bitter, filled with unspoken resentment? Each suspect cast furtive glances towards one another, and as they spoke, Poirot seized upon every twitch, every hesitation. It was Lady Beatrice who unintentionally rendered her own testimony suspect. He was my competition. His presence dared to overshadow the brilliance of my soirees. Evelyn shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. But darling, were you not the one with the most to lose when he arrived? Your name held more than decorative value within these walls. The web of lies and ambitions grew thicker, more convoluted, as Poirot began to unravel the delicate threads binding them together. He noticed the small details, the imprint of a palm on the mantelpiece, the delicate brush of red paint that had not yet dried near the skirting board, and the evasive flicker of anxious glances exchanged between Lady Beatrice and Martin. Perchance we find ourselves amid a game of dueling hearts, each bidding against one another for favor and significance, Poirot mused, concerned yet intrigued by the unfolding drama. You see, each of you bears a motive soaked in regret, cloaked behind veils of affection. As the revelations spiraled, Poirot's mind began to dance upon the precipice of an epiphany, each connection whispering secrets to an attentive ear. But amongst the disarray, a red herring emerged, misleading him momentarily. A note, frantically scribbled, seemingly from Eleanor, filled with accusations against Cedric promising to expose truths that would destroy reputations. And yet, this is perhaps not as it seems, he pondered. Why would a woman scorn turn to such letters when her own heart bears such fractured sentiments? Then a sudden realization gripped him, piercing through the tension. The true schemer was hidden in plain sight, remnants of pain echoing through her heart, yet driving her to craft a tale of innocence. Poirot took a measured step forward, scanning their faces with a piercing intensity. Tell me, Evelyn, where were you when the final act transpired? What of the weapon? Evelyn's composure flickered, and the weight of the truth bore down upon her. The dagger. I was to use it for a piece, a performance. We were meant to be united in art, not torn asunder in death, she confessed, each word tumbling out like a shrouded confession. The final twist unfolded with chilling clarity, for it was indeed Lady Beatrice who had wielded the dagger in a fit of fury, driven by jealousy toward both Cedric and her competitor. they had sought to destroy one another. With tears streaming, she whispered the truth that shattered the facade, unknowingly, revealing her heart's dark intricacies. But it was not intended for him. It was meant for us all. As the echoes of betrayal racked the room, Poirot turned to face the remnants of their shattered trust. In the end, it is not merely a matter of love and rivalry, but a crucible of ambition that binds you in tragedy. Cedric's last word was not death, but the unveiling of the monster residing within. You were all players in this unforgiving game, my dear friends. The storm outside raged on, but it was the tempest within this room that would long haunt them. Poirot had peeled back the layers of human emotion, exposing the frailty of their connections, reminding them all too painfully, in our darkest desires, we become the architects of our own demise. Chapter 12. The Silence Broken. The gnarled branches clawed furiously at the storm-laden sky, their silhouettes entwined in a wrestling dance, as if the very essence of nature conspired against the innocence of man. In the dim candlelight of the drawing room, shadows twisted with a malevolence that spoke of secrets long hidden. A shiver coursed through Hercule Poirot as he moved through the forsaken space, his senses ignited by an unsettling disquiet. It was not merely the storm, but a more tempestuous chaos that stirred within the souls gathered under this roof. Ah, but the heart carries burdens that even the most elegant facade cannot conceal, mon ami, he murmured, acknowledging the insidious tension that filled the air like the acrid scent of smoke. The remnants of Cedric's tragic demise weighed heavily on those left behind, swirling around them like specters of guilt. Lady Beatrice, her hands trembling as she meticulously arranged the remnants of a grand soirée that would never be, stood bathed in the flickering light. Her dress clung to her form, now wilted and devoid of the gaiety it once promised. Cedric's death has shattered our lives. I shall never forgive myself for what I thought, she crumbled, her voice a haunting melody that sent a ripple of dread through the others. Nearby, Martin's face was pale and drawn, yet struck with an intensity that belied his fragility. He manipulated us all, he hissed, his voice laced with venom. We plucked at strings of fate, unwittingly complicit in this dark tableau. His fierce gaze turned toward Evelyn, who stood unfazed, her complexion unnaturally serene, like an artist poised in front of an unfinished canvas. And yet, was his death not an act of retribution for the torment he wrought upon each of us? She retorted, her eyes glinting in the candlelight like shards of glass, carefully masking the tempest that brewed within. Poirot watched closely, his mind piqued by the intricate nuances of their interplay, the darkness beneath their words casting an exquisite shadow upon their grief. Each of their alibis seemed well crafted, yet in the architecture of their emotions lay their undoing. He swept his keen gaze across the room, noting the shattered vase. On the floor in the damp cloth, stained with what appeared to be the remnants of red wine, an indication of a party ungraciously interrupted. Tell me, mes amis, where were you all at the precise moment when fate turned its cruel hand? The question lingered, thick with the weight of the moment, and the silence that enveloped them deepened, becoming a living entity. In the ensuing chaos, they spoke in hushed tones, each recounting their fragmented stories, replete with half-truths cloaked in desperation. Lady Beatrice spoke of her longing for Cedric's acceptance, the bitter taste of envy bittering her tongue. I had every intention of welcoming him into our circle, yet he made it unbearable. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but Poirot sensed the undercurrents of her narrative, how her ambition gnawed at the fabric of her loyalty. Then came Martin, who laments of being overshadowed by Cedric's charisma, while surreptitiously feeding the fire of jealousy. I always believed he represented the brother I so desired, yet he was also my greatest rival. His words dripped with conflict, and Poirot pondered whether that rivalry could have birthed something more sinister than mere envy. Evelyn, however, was a riddle wrapped in artistry. Cedric spoke of the greatness of our collaboration, a symbiotic dance of creation. How could I harbor hatred for an admirer of my work? The alluring tone in her voice bordered on the seductive, yet Poirot knew that beneath her composed, Exterior lay the chaos of unspoken grievances. As the night deepened, Poirot gathered the suspects in the art-filled corridor, peppered with portraits that bore the weight of false smiles and unfulfilled promises. To grasp the truth, one must sift through layers of deception, he instructed, his sharp gaze landing upon each member of the gathering. Let us not forget the remnants of our shared history. We must understand what truly binds you to this tragedy. As he posed a series of questions, carefully observing reactions, he felt the tension ricochet off the walls. Each confession fragmented their narrative further. The whispers grew louder, as did the echoes of hidden pain. In that charged atmosphere, a stumbling block emerged, a letter directed towards Lady Beatrice, scrawled with accusations against Cedric, suggesting he was the source of her discomfort. Poirot caught the subtle shift in her demeanor as he presented it to her. "What say you, my dear lady?" he inquired, the steely undercurrent of his tone pressing her to confront the treachery. "You claim no malice dwelt within your heart, yet the pen seems to speak differently." The glimmer of mischief flickered in her eyes, but she retreated into silence. In the tussles of emotions, the culmination of the night snapped into sudden clarity as Poirot leaned into their words, detecting a singular thread that bound them all. Ambition interlaced with despair. As the clock ticked ominously in the background, an unnerving realization settled in the room. He turned to Evelyn, aware that the heart is a fickle friend. "Mon ami, art demands sacrifice, yet does it compel one to shed blood for a masterpiece?" he challenged, his voice resonating with the weight of their shared tragedy. In that charged moment, the revelations unfurled like petals of a dark flower, a sudden explosion of emotional intensity. Lady Beatrice, straining under the weight of her choices, confessed a tempest of motives torn between love and jealousy. Just as soon as she spoke, the dam broke, revealing that she had indeed been the made architect of her own ruin, possessing the dagger wielded to strike Cedric, but not with intent to kill. No, merely to frighten, an accidental plunge into death's embrace. Yet as Poirot prepared to deliver the final denouement, a twist of fate struck him like lightning. Martin's voice erupted into the fabric of the night. "You misunderstand the labyrinth of the heart. While I delighted in sabotage, it was Evelyn who knew that love and pain dwell in the same chamber. She sought the dagger first, not me." The shocking accusation ricocheted around them, leaving a tremor of disbelief and betrayal hanging in the air. As shocks rippled through their gathering, Poirot felt the final pieces of this tragic story align. "Indeed, but it is not merely an act of revenge that has brought disaster upon you, but the very roots of desire that bind you all in this torment," he posited, raising a steady hand. "Betrayal may cloud vision, yet it is the silent greed that fuels it. You stand here, not merely as bereaved, but as co-creators, ashes and embers tracing back to Cedric's spark." The silence swelled like a drum before the inevitable crash of realization struck. How dare they conspire among themselves, each believing themselves blameless, while the specter of envy had wrapped its tendrils deep within their souls. Poirot's gaze swept across their utterly defeated expressions. "In the facade that you maintained, your very essence has laid waste to your judgments," he concluded, his voice reverberating with finality. "Beware, for in the shadows of your desires, you all remain as architects of your own demise." The storm's fury mirrored the tumult within the drawing room, and as the dawn lingered in the recesses of the night, Poirot stepped away from the fractured remnants of ambition. An artist, decked in the melancholic hues of betrayal, their lives irrevocably intertwined.